My husband sent me divorce papers just 3 hours after I gave birth. But karma came for him faster than he ever imagined. The air inside the private recovery room at St. Jude Hospital was sterile, cold, and quiet, except for the steady beeping of the monitors and the soft, even breathing of the 2 newborns sleeping in their plastic bassinets by the window. I, Olivia, lay on the hospital bed feeling like my body had just been taken apart and stitched back together in a hurry. The C-section had been complicated. The twins arrived early, and the recovery was brutal. My hair was plastered to my scalp with sweat, my face bare, and the hospital gown was stained with birth fluids and breast milk. I felt exposed, raw, and exhausted down to my bones. I was waiting for my husband. I was waiting for Ethan. I was expecting flowers. I was expecting tears of joy. I was expecting the man I had carried through 5 years of his life to walk through that door and look at our children with the same awe swelling inside my chest right now. The door swung open. It wasn't Ethan alone. He walked in carrying the scent of expensive cologne and the sharp, grating click of high heels. Ethan wore a tailored Italian suit, looking exactly like the CEO of Vance Global. Behind him was Chloe, his executive assistant. Chloe was 23, glowing in a tight pencil skirt and a silk blouse, her hair perfectly curled and bouncing. She looked like a magazine cover. I looked like a disaster. Ethan didn't look at the bassinets. He didn't look at the twins. His eyes locked on me, and the corner of his mouth curled into an unhidden smirk. "God," Ethan said, voice flat. "Look at you!" He walked to the side of the bed, keeping a safe distance, as if my exhaustion was contagious. "Ethan," I whispered, my throat dry. "The babies. They're here." "I saw them." He waved a hand toward the window without turning his head. "They're fine. The nannies will pick them up later." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick blue stack of legal documents. He tossed it onto my chest. It landed with a heavy thud, pressing right into my incision. I groaned from the pain. "What is this?" I asked, my hands trembling as I touched the stack. "Divorce papers," Ethan said calmly, "and an NDA. Sign them." The whole world seemed to tilt. "A divorce? Ethan, I just gave birth 3 hours ago." "Look at the state you're in," Ethan spat. He pointed at me, at the 4th lines, at my swollen, pale skin. "You're pathetic, Olivia. You've been pathetic for a year. You're fat, you're tired, and you're boring. You're ruining my image." He pulled Chloe closer. She let out a giggle, a mean little giggle, then leaned her head on his shoulder, looking at me with pity. "I'm the CEO of a billion-dollar tech empire," Ethan declared, puffing out his chest. "I need a partner who reflects that status. Someone young, energetic, polished. Chloe fits the brand. You're just a sad housewife." I stared at him. The man I once loved. The man I built. He was rewriting history in real time. He truly believed he was the sun the world revolved around, and I was some dying satellite. The soft breathing of my babies reminded me I had to stay steady for them. I sat up slowly, trying to straighten my back so I wouldn't look as broken, while my head throbbed as I replayed these past few days over and over again. "Did you leave me for her?" I heard my own voice break into the room, thin like a stretched thread about to snap. No raised tone, no begging, just a bare question falling into the smell of antiseptic and the faint breaths of 2 newborns sleeping only a few steps away from me. All of this just because I'm not pretty anymore? Because I gained weight during pregnancy? Because I gave you children? Ethan didn't answer right away. He adjusted the cuff of his suit jacket, sighed, as if I had interrupted an important meeting. Then he spoke, his voice flat enough to cut skin. "I left you because I deserve better." I watched him standing there, shiny shoes on the hospital tile, the fresh Tom Ford cologne hitting my face, and realized he believed every word he said. Ethan tilted his head slightly, like he was trying to explain something very simple to a child. "Now sign it. The terms are clear. You'll get support for 2 years, a small amount, I keep the company, the condo, the assets. Everything. I have the best legal team in the city. If you don't sign, I'll drag this out until you have nothing left. He emphasized the words nothing left like a sentence. You have nothing now, Olivia. I didn't speak, didn't argue, didn't react. I only looked at him, at the way he stood with his feet spread wider than necessary, trying to take up space. At his hand resting on Chloe's shoulder for a moment, possessive and performative at the same time. At the way his eyes flicked over my stomach, my incision still aching, as if my weakness proved my worthlessness. Ethan thought he was winning, thought that thick blue folder in his hand was the key to a new future, bright, clean, free of a wife and children. But what he didn't know was, he had just locked himself into his final pair of handcuffs. Because to create this cruel moment, Ethan had committed 4 mistakes men like him always make. He thought that what he ran, he owned. He was so confident he never once checked whose name was on the legal paperwork. He confused CEO with owner, a fatal mistake in business. And his biggest mistake, he underestimated the woman who had quietly kept his entire empire from collapsing, just because she looked like a housewife. He forgot, or maybe, out of ego, chose to ignore the reality of our legal standing. I looked at Chloe. She was smiling, victory painted across her perfectly made-up face. She thought she had won, that she had captured a billionaire. She had no idea she was standing on a trap door. I picked up the pen. Are you sure, Ethan? I asked softly. Are you absolutely sure you want to dissolve our legal marriage right now? Once I sign this, every tie between us is severed. The division of assets will be permanent. Ethan laughed. Don't try to threaten me, Olivia. You have no power. Sign it. I'm not sharing my future millions with a sloppy mess. All right, I said. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I opened the folder to the signature page. I read the clause he had highlighted. Both parties agree to divide assets strictly based on legal ownership. Each party retains exclusive ownership of any asset registered under their name. He thought that clause would protect him. He really was an idiot. I signed my name. Olivia Miller, the name I had carried for 5 years of marriage. But in just a few hours, I would officially return to being Olivia Vance. The ink was dark and permanent. I closed the folder. I kept one copy and tossed the other back at him. It slid across the hospital sheets and hit the floor near his polished shoes. Congratulations, Ethan, I said, leaning back into the pillow. You're a free man. You have your freedom, and you have Chloe. Ethan picked up the paper, checking the signature with a greedy smile. Finally done. I should have done this years ago. Get out, I said, closing my eyes. Take your mistress out of my room. The babies need sleep. Gladly, Ethan scoffed. Enjoy the diapers, Olivia. I'll enjoy my life. He grabbed Chloe's hand, and the two of them strutted out of the room, leaving me in silence. I had barely closed my eyes, trying to stabilize my breathing, when the sound of heels and hurried footsteps came rushing back. I opened my eyes. They had returned. Not just Ethan and Chloe. My mother-in-law, Linda, stood behind them, towering with eyes cold as steel. Beside her was a man in a gray suit, silver-rimmed glasses, holding a leather briefcase as flat and sharp as a blade. A lawyer. I felt the blood inside me reverse direction. Olivia! Linda spoke first, her voice smooth, rehearsed, as if she had practiced this moment for a month. There are some documents we need to discuss immediately, for the children's best interest. Best interest? I repeated, my throat suddenly dry as paper. The lawyer stepped forward, placing the briefcase on the metal meal table beside my bed. He sat, right next to me, as if I were an unstable patient needing to be subdued. Ethan stood across from me, arms crossed, his face still glowing with smug contempt. Your condition, the lawyer began, voice even and icy, is clearly not stable. Difficult surgery, weakened health, mentally vulnerable. He pushed the stack of papers toward me. We propose that you sign a temporary transfer of custody of the twins to the Miller family. I looked down at the pages. On the very first page, the words jumped out at me like blades. Transfer of parental rights. Temporary sole decision-making authority. Relinquishment of maternal claim. My hand twitched. I gripped the hospital sheet, my nails digging into the fabric. You want to take my children away from me? I whispered, my voice barely more than air, crushed in the center of my chest. Olivia, don't be dramatic, Linda said, tilting her head. Her thin smile stretched tight like a thread about to break. We're thinking of the babies. You're weak, physically and emotionally. It's best if you rest and let our family care for them. My babies, I breathed, my chest tightening. No, Ethan cut in, voice sharp as a stone thrown. The kids need stability, and clearly, you can't provide that. I told you already, this is best for everyone. Then Chloe stepped forward, clutching Ethan's arm like she had already reserved her spot as stepmother. Olivia, she said, voice sweet enough to make me sick. You need time to recover. This is the most reasonable option. I felt a heat shoot down my spine. Then a sharp beep. Beep! Beep! Erupted in the room. My heart monitor spiked, the alarm turning red. The lawyer calmly pushed another page toward me. Sign it, Olivia, just to make everything easier. Easier for who? I tried to scream, but it came out a rasp, strangled with despair and fury. For you? The door slammed open. 2 doctors and a nurse rushed in. Out! Dr. Harris barked, harsher than I had ever heard. The patient is in medical distress. Everyone out, now! We're handling a family matter, Ethan protested. Outside, now, or I'll call security. The doctor's voice was so cold, even ice would crack. The neonatal nurse appeared seconds later, taking the twins and moving them into the NICU, away from this toxic chaos. The lawyer closed the folder, sliding it into his briefcase with disappointment. Ethan shot me one last look, a calculating glare. And then they left. The door slammed shut behind them, leaving only the wild beeping of the monitor and the shaky sound of my own breathing. I lay there, staring up at the blinding white ceiling. In that moment, I understood one thing. Ethan didn't just want to leave me, didn't just want to humiliate me, didn't just want a divorce. He had planned to take everything, even the 2 babies I had just brought into the world. And the worst part, the plan wasn't impulsive. It had been prepared long ago, meticulous, cold, without a single crack. I closed my eyes, a chill slicing straight through my spine. This wasn't betrayal anymore. This was war. And I had just seen the true faces of the people who declared it. That night, when everything finally settled down, I reached for the phone beside my bed. The first call I made was to the security command. This is Olivia Vance, the name I set aside during the years I was a wife. But now it will return, along with every ounce of power that comes with it. I said into the phone. Black code. Initiate leadership transfer protocol, effective immediately. The next morning, the sun rose over San Francisco, glittering across the glass towers of the financial district. I hadn't slept at all. Truly couldn't sleep, even after major surgery. Every cell in my body screamed exhaustion. Staring out the window, I could imagine Ethan waking up on the sofa in the penthouse living room. He hadn't wanted to share a bed with me for months anyway. He was feeling amazing. He stretched, basking in the relief of a man who had finally cast off a burden. He showered, shaved carefully. He picked his most expensive suit. He planned to walk into the office, announce our divorce, and then present Chloe as his official partner. He was the king of Vance Global, and his reign was only just beginning. He drove the company Aston Martin to headquarters. He blasted music, speeding along the freeway. He imagined the jealous looks of coworkers when they learned he was single and powerful again. But when he pulled into the underground employee garage, He drove toward his usual reserved parking spot near the executive elevator. There was a cone sitting there. Ethan frowned. He honked. The valet, an old man named Jerry, who usually waved at him every morning, was nowhere to be found. "Useless idiots," Ethan muttered. He parked in the visitor row, 3 aisles back. He grabbed his briefcase and headed for the private executive elevator. This elevator went straight to the 50th floor, the C-suite. To access it, you needed the special black keycard. Ethan approached the scanner and swiped. Beep, beep, beep. A harsh red light blinked on the panel. Access denied. Ethan blinked, as if his eyes were lying to him. He wiped the card on his sleeve and swiped again. Beep, beep, beep. Access denied. Invalid card. What the hell? Ethan growled. The system must be glitching. He exhaled angrily and walked toward the main lobby elevators. He would have to ride with regular staff. He stepped into the grand lobby of Vance Global, a cathedral of glass and steel buzzing with hundreds of employees. Ethan moved toward the turnstiles. He tapped his card again. Beep, beep, beep. The turnstile stayed locked. Behind him, a line of employees began to form. "Excuse me, sir, could you move?" someone asked. "Do you know who I am?" Ethan snapped, whipping around. "I'm the CEO. The machine is broken." "Sir, please step aside," a deep voice said. Ethan turned. 3 large security officers stood there. These weren't the friendly lobby guards. They wore tactical vests. "My card isn't working," Ethan barked at the lead officer. "Let me in. I have a board meeting in 20 minutes. "Mr. Miller?" the guard said, expression empty. "Your card isn't working because it was deactivated. You are not authorized to enter the secure areas." "Deactivated?" Ethan let out a high hysterical laugh. "Who would do that? I run this building. I'm the CEO. "Not anymore, sir," the guard replied. "We've received a no-entry order for you. Please leave immediately." "This is insane!" Ethan shouted, his voice echoing across the lobby as the entire room fell silent. "Who ordered that? Call the chairwoman. Call the board. I want answers." The sound of a chime cut through the tension. The central elevators, the VIP elevators Ethan had planned to use from the garage, slid open. The lobby went dead silent. 2 security officers stepped out first, clearing the way. And then, I came out. But it wasn't the me from yesterday. Not the woman exhausted and hollowed out in a hospital gown. I was seated in a sleek electric wheelchair, moving smoothly and quietly. Today, I wore a tailored white suit, perfectly fitted. My hair was neatly pinned back, elegant and controlled. The dark sunglasses hid the exhaustion in my eyes, but to Ethan, in this moment, they radiated something far more terrifying, a sense of absolute power. The wheelchair glided across the marble floor, flanked by my legal counsel, my CFO, and my attorney. Ethan stared at me, jaw-dropping. "Olivia? What? What the hell are you doing here? You're supposed to be in the hospital. You look ridiculous." He stormed toward me, face flushed with anger. "So this is it? You shut off my keycard to be petty? Get out! Security! Escort my ex-wife out of the building! She's hysterical!" The guards didn't move toward me. They moved toward Ethan, hands still resting on their stun guns. I stopped my wheelchair about 5 feet away from him. Slowly, I removed my sunglasses. I looked at him, cold and unblinking. "Mr. Miller," the chief legal counsel said, stepping forward, "show some respect." "Respect who?" Ethan barked. "Respect a housewife?" The general counsel adjusted his glasses. "Respect the chairwoman of the board." Ethan froze. The words rattled inside his skull, refusing to settle. "Chairwoman? What the hell are you talking about? Her father was the chair. He's dead." "And when he died," I said, my voice calm and amplified by the quiet of the lobby, "he left full control of Vance Global to me, to his daughter." The truth landed like a blow. "I appointed you CEO 5 years ago, Ethan," I said. "I wanted you to feel important. I wanted you to have a career. I stepped back. I worked from home. I ran the board and the shareholders from behind the scenes so you could shine. I let you believe you were the king." I looked at him with a depth of disappointment that made his face falter. "But you never owned this company, not once. You have never owned a single voting share. You were an employee, a well-paid, overpraised manager I hired." Ethan staggered back. His entire reality cracked open. He wasn't a self-made titan. He was a husband doing the job his wife assigned him. "No," Ethan whispered. That's not true. I built this." "You maintained it," I corrected. "Barely. Your expense reports are a disaster, but that's for the auditors to handle." Chloe, who had been waiting for Ethan with a bright, eager smile at the cafe in the lobby, stepped forward, her face twisting in confusion. "Ethan, what's going on? Why is she here?" I turned to Chloe. "Perfect timing," I said flatly. The attorney beside me pulled a sheet from his file and handed it to me. It was the divorce agreement Ethan had forced me to sign less than 24 hours earlier. "Yesterday, Ethan," I said, lifting the paper, "you forced me to sign this. You were so desperate to protect your assets that you insisted on one clause: complete division of assets based solely on legal ownership." I smiled. "You forgot to check whose name was actually on everything, Ethan. The company? Mine. The penthouse ownership papers? Mine. The Aston Martin? Owned by the company." I handed the paper back to the attorney. "You wanted a clean break? You've got one." I looked at the head of security. "As chairwoman of the board and majority shareholder," I declared, "Ethan Miller is terminated from his position as CEO, effective immediately for cause." "Cause?" Ethan choked. "What cause?" "Gross misconduct, moral turpitude, public disgrace of the company, and," she pointed toward Chloe, "embezzlement of company funds to support an illicit relationship with a subordinate." I turned to Chloe. "You're fired too, Chloe. Clean out your desk. You have 10 minutes. Ethan looked around. Hundreds of employees in the lobby, the very people he had bullied and ignored for years, were watching him. Some of them even smiled. "You can't do this!" Ethan screamed, lunging toward me. "I'm the CEO! I'm the face of this company!" The guards tackled him to the marble floor, twisting his arms behind him. I tilted my head, observing him as if he were a child who had just dropped a toy he believed belonged to him. "CEO," I repeated slowly. "Not owner, Ethan." His face crumpled, his brain scrambling to run faster than the reality slamming into him. I continued, my voice soft, but stripped of all pity. "You don't own anything you've bragged about for the past 5 years. Not a single share." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but no words formed. I saw a tremor pass through his shoulders, small, but enough to tell me that for the first time in years, he realized he wasn't invincible. I leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on him. "Do you know what I inherited from my father?" "Everything." I let each word drop like a stone down a well. "Vance Global, 100% control. This entire building, every office, every vehicle, every corporate asset, even the penthouse you've been living in. The one where you've been sleeping on the sofa for months. That belongs to me, too." A soft gasp rose from the crowd of employees. I didn't turn. I just watched Ethan. He exhaled sharply, like someone punched the air out of his lungs. "And you," I continued, my voice not loud but impossible to miss. "What do you actually own?" I tilted my head, as though waiting for him to answer. "You have student loans, a few overdue personal credit card bills, and—" I let my gaze travel down his body and back up. "The Brioni suit you're wearing. Once you walk out of this building, it won't even qualify under the employee dress code." Chloe stood behind him, her hand still clutching his arm, but slowly slipping away, as if afraid she might sink with him. I didn't look at her. I only looked at Ethan, and in that moment, under the weight of hundreds of eyes, he became strangely small in a way he didn't even understand. I ended it like closing a coffin lid. "Ethan, you lived 5 years believing a lie of your own making, and 5 minutes of truth, is all it took to destroy it. The lobby fell silent. No one laughed, no one spoke. And in that silence, I finally saw what I had been waiting for all these years. The look in a man's eyes when he realizes, at last, that the power he mocked was the very thing that fed him, protected him, and now was throwing him out of the world he thought he ruled. "Chief of Security," I said calmly. "Take his keys." A guard reached into Ethan's pocket and pulled out the keys to the Aston Martin. The guards hauled Ethan to his feet. His briny suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled. He looked at me. "Olivia," he pleaded, his voice shaking. "Please, the twins, I'm their father." "You made your choice in the hospital room," I said, my tone cold as ice. "You chose your image over your children. You chose your mistress over the wife who just gave birth to your babies. You walked out." I motioned to the guards. "Remove him from my building." The security team dragged Ethan and a sobbing Chloe toward the revolving doors. They were pushed out onto the crowded street, left with nothing but the clothes on their backs. No car, no home, no job, no generous severance package. I watched them go. The lobby erupted into applause. Employees clapped and cheered for their chairwoman. I raised my hand for silence. I looked at my team. "Let's get back to work. We have a lot of damage to repair." I turned my wheelchair around. My legal advisor pressed the VIP elevator button. "Madam, where would you like to go?" he asked. "I'm heading to the boardroom," I said. "Then back to the hospital. My children need me. Keep eyes on them. He won't stop yet." The elevator doors closed, shutting out the noise, lifting me toward the top of the tower, where I belonged. That night, I thought maybe I would finally get some sleep once the twins drifted off. But the city of San Francisco outside didn't sleep, and apparently neither did my heart. I sat alone in the small office inside the penthouse. No lights on, just the warm gold glow from the streets below spilling through the glass and stretching across the wooden floor. When my phone buzzed, I almost didn't want to look, but the name that appeared made me pause. Chloe. I hesitated for a beat, then answered. Her voice came through fractured, trembling in the way someone sounds when they're scared and desperate at the same time. "Olivia, I need to talk to you, right now, before it's too late." I didn't respond. I let the silence hang until she had to fill it herself. "Ethan and his mother, they're planning to sell the assets under your name." She exhaled sharply into the phone. "I heard them discussing it earlier. They're going to forge your signature." I rose slowly. The streetlights reflected against the glass, splitting my silhouette in two. A mother, a chairwoman, a woman betrayed in a delivery room. I didn't yet know which shadow would answer Chloe. She continued, her voice shrinking. "I emailed you already. Evidence they sent each other. The transaction plans. I don't want to be part of this. I just want a fresh start. Please don't put my name in the dispute. Don't ruin my career." I breathed out slowly. The air from the vent blew across my skin, cold as needles. "Why should I believe you?" I asked. Chloe's voice cracked. "Because a few days ago I thought you were the loser. But now, I know I was standing on the wrong side. And Ethan, he'll drag anyone down with him if he can." A long silence. I could hear her swallowing tears. "Please, Olivia, just give me a chance." I didn't answer. I ended the call with 2 words. "Send it." A soft ding followed. Evidence flooded my inbox. Strings of emails, drafted transaction documents, plans to liquidate assets under my name, forged signatures, handwritten practice sheets trying to mimic my pen strokes. My chest felt heavy, like someone had set stone on my ribs. But this time, there was no panic, only clarity. I called Rebecca, my attorney. She picked up immediately. "Bring everything we need tomorrow morning," I said. "We're going to court." The next morning, Rebecca and I walked into the county courthouse, its hallways long and washed in pale white light. The clerk accepted the folder from Rebecca, her eyes glancing from the red seal to the handwriting on the emergency petition. The clerk looked at me a beat longer, maybe seeing the exhaustion behind my thin smile. Then she nodded and reached for the heavy stamp. Each strike sounded like it was sealing shut a door Ethan thought he could slip through behind my back. When she handed the stamped copies back, she said softly, "Good luck, ma'am." We hadn't even stepped out of the hallway when sharp footsteps echoed from afar, slicing through the stillness. Ethan and Linda, with their attorney trailing close behind. Ethan saw me first. His face flushed red, his eyes blazing. "What did you do, Olivia?" Linda hovered behind him, her voice shrill. "You have no right to get ahead of us, no right to ruin our deal." I didn't flinch, didn't step back. I simply lifted the injunction order, light as a sheet of paper. "Actually," I said, "I have every right." Their lawyer stepped forward, but Rebecca blocked him with a stare cold enough to force him half a step back. Linda snapped, "You think this means you've won? This isn't over!" I tilted my head, looking at her through the washed-out hallway light. "No," I said softly, my voice sharp as shattered glass. "But it certainly ends for one of you." Ethan opened his mouth to argue again, but then he saw the bright red seal stamped across the document in my hand. And in that instant, I saw real panic flicker. Not anger, not bruised ego, but fear. I turned away. Rebecca fell into step beside me. Our footsteps echoed down the hall, growing fainter, while behind us, Ethan and Linda's voices tangled together, frantic, angry, desperate, the sound of people realizing they'd already lost long before the game even began. 3 months later, when my incision had healed and my hands no longer trembled when I held my babies, I walked into the family courtroom, a wide room with cold white lights, long rows of wooden benches, and the faint mix of paperwork, old wood, and cheap perfume from people suing each other over love and money lingering in the air. Ethan was already there. Sitting in the plaintiff's row, his suit no longer crisp, his hair no longer styled. But it was his eyes that made my skin crawl the eyes of a man about to perform. The moment Judge Harper entered, Ethan stood. His voice softened, coated with manufactured sympathy. "Your Honor, I want to begin by saying I care deeply for Olivia, my wife. But, after childbirth, she became unstable. Her emotions were erratic, her behavior unpredictable. I only want our children to be safe." He spoke as if he hadn't thrown divorce papers onto my chest in the recovery room. As if he had ever been there for me. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Harper lowered her glasses, peering at Ethan over the frames. "Do you have evidence for these claims?" Ethan placed a hand over his heart, like an actor in a cheap musical. "Your Honor, not evidence but sincere concern." That was when I rose. I didn't look at Ethan. I looked only at the judge. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady, "I would like to submit evidence of how he showed his concern for me only hours after I delivered our twins." Rebecca, my attorney, placed a thick folder on the table and opened it to the first page. The courtroom fell silent as hospital security footage appeared on the screen. Ethan entering my recovery room with Chloe tossing the divorce packet onto me, a woman still hooked to IVs, unable even to sit up. I continued slowly, each word weighted like stone being set on the floor. Ethan demanded I sign divorce papers and a child relinquishment agreement 3 hours after surgery. In front of his mistress and his mother, Rebecca flipped to the next page an audio recording of Ethan saying, "You have nothing, Olivia, and sign it. I have the best lawyers in the city." Judge Harper's eyes darkened. I lifted another folder. All assets, the company, the home, the vehicles are under my legal ownership, clearly documented. And this is the injunction Ethan and his mother attempted to bypass by forging my signature. Ethan's lawyer stiffened. Linda's lips tightened until her face turned nearly white. Judge Harper reviewed each document, checking the seals, the signatures, the dates. She took exactly 3 minutes, that felt like an entire year. Then she looked up. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice dropping, "it appears the only person displaying instability in ethics and conduct is not Mrs. Vance." Ethan gripped the edge of the table, his face turning the color of ash. The judge tapped her gavel lightly. Mrs. Olivia Vance is granted full custody of the twins. The sound of the gavel was like a door slamming on the last escape route Ethan had tried to keep open. Mr. Miller will have supervised visitation only and only after completing parenting classes. The court acknowledges coercion of divorce, signing abandonment of wife in medical distress, and attempted asset misappropriation. Ethan opened his mouth, but not a single sound came out. In the days that followed, the story of his spectacular downfall spread like wildfire across San Francisco's business community. The CEO, who handed his wife divorce papers just hours after she gave birth, only to discover that the wife he dismissed actually owned the company he believed he controlled, became a cautionary tale about arrogance and self-delusion. The twins born in chaos were raised in stability by a mother who understood that real power sometimes requires waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. I had spent 5 years letting Ethan believe he was the king while quietly maintaining the true authority behind the scenes. 6 months later, I appeared on the cover of Fortune magazine with the title, Executive of the Year. The article detailed my journey from grieving daughter inheriting a company to the strategic leader who transformed Vance Global into one of the most profitable tech firms in the country. The article included a section on Ethan's attempts to rebuild his career. He struggled to find employment because of the rumors about how he treated me. His relationship with Chloe ended soon after, once she realized Ethan had no money and no prospects. I allowed him more supervised visitation with the twins. Children deserve to know their father, even when he doesn't deserve them, I told the Fortune reporter when asked. But these visits come with court conditions. Ethan must complete parenting classes, maintain stable employment, and demonstrate genuine interest in the children's well-being, rather than using them for personal leverage. My story became required reading among wealthy family-run companies, a stark warning. Legal experts used the divorce documents as a case study in how assumptions can destroy even the most carefully drafted agreements. Ethan's attorney had assumed that the CEO of a company must naturally own a significant stake in it, a fatal miscalculation. Outward fragility can conceal extraordinary strength. I let myself be seen as a dependent housewife while maintaining absolute control over a billion-dollar empire. 5 years later, I had turned Vance Global into one of the most admired companies in Silicon Valley, known for both innovation and ethical leadership. I established policies protecting employees from harassment and retaliation, created pathways for advancement based on merit rather than connections, and built a corporate culture that valued substance over appearances. The twins, now old enough to understand that their mother was someone remarkable, felt proud whenever they visited Mom's office, where everyone treated me with genuine respect. They would never know a world where women were dismissed as just housewives, or where success was measured solely by image and posturing. Meanwhile, Ethan had found a mid-level management job at a small consulting firm. His salary was a fraction of what it once was, and his lifestyle reflected practical earnings instead of fantasies of wealth. The experience humbled him. During one supervised visit with the twins, he tried to explain why he wasn't around more often. Dad made some mistakes, he said carefully, and sometimes when adults make mistakes, there are consequences. My daughter, wiser than her years, looked at him with clear sharpness and asked, "Mom said the most important thing is to treat people well, especially when they can't defend themselves." Did you forget that Ethan had no answer, just as he had no answer for the way I dismantled his life piece by piece? He had confused position with power control, with ownership and image with reality. In the end, his greatest weakness was his inability to see beyond himself. My legacy is still being written, but its foundation is clear. True power doesn't need to show off real strength, doesn't require cruelty to sustain it. And sometimes the most devastating response to betrayal is simply allowing the betrayer to bear the full weight of their own choices. The divorce papers Ethan hurled at me in the hospital room are now framed and hanging in my office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of how quickly assumptions can destroy those who hold them, and how justice can wait patiently for the right moment to reveal itself. Sometimes the strongest response to extreme cruelty isn't immediate retaliation, but strategic patience, letting someone unravel so completely that no explanation is required. When someone shows you who they truly are, in their moment of supposed triumph, believe them, and then show them who you are when it matters most.